This is George Miller. So, Dean, this is about remembering.
Yeah, I'm Dean Semler. I'm the cinematographer. Shot this. This was my first action piece ever. I remember when I met George and Byron for the first time. They were both dressed in suits, and George had a bow tie, and I thought, boy, these guys are serious. I expected to be in jeans and T-shirts, but...
Well, I remember the first time, at the time, they weren't... The top cinematographers in Australia were busy, and I remember meeting you and Johnny Seal and amazed at how modest you guys were. Neither of you sold yourselves at all.
Right.
In fact, you just kind of shuffled out the door thinking, oh, well, I'd like to do a movie, but, And then I went and saw A Steam Train Passes.
Oh, right. Okay,
and, the documentary you did for Film Australia, and it just blew me away. I thought, oh, my God, this guy's got some eye and some beautiful stuff.
So that did it. I didn't know that.
It was I also saw your reel and stuff. And, I must tell you, Dean, I never knew what hit me working with you. It was an extraordinary experience. It was the first time one of the things about Australian DPs is this thing, which I call the circle of grace, that sort of relaxed, easy centre around a movie where particularly the actors feel very safe. And I've never seen it as quite as marked as when I saw it with you. And I remember just how much it affected the actors, particularly Mel Gibson. I can tell you a bit about that later.
Oh, that's lovely to hear, yeah. I like to keep harmony around the camera, to keep it peaceful, to keep it quiet.
Yeah.
Respect for actors is hugely important, I think, because they're, as an operator particularly, I think actors look to you for a reaction because you're the one that's seeing it for the first time, particularly then before we had video splits. So.
Yeah, in fact, it was amazing. Without video split, we can talk about the movie in a minute, but without video split, you rely enormously as a director on the operator, and given that you were the DP and the operator, and so at the moment cut happened, I remember looking at you and just reading your body language as you came off the viewfinder, and I thought, okay, that was a goodie. I need to either give a little green or, in those days, you just don't know what you're getting. And remember, we were out in the middle of Australia and we wouldn't see dailies until a couple of days later.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Brutal enough to pillage would survive. The gangs took over the highways, ready to wage war for a tank of juice. And in this Mel...
Interesting to watch how Mel had changed between the two films. He was a boy in the first one and he became a man in the second one.
That's right.
He was only 21 on the first Mad Max.
Was he really?
And then on the second one... he was 23, I think.
23 only.
24. Yeah. So.
He hasn't changed.
No.
Not at all.
No.
He's the same.
Yeah, still a kid at heart.
Still a larrikin.
Yeah, larrikin, that's the word.
Haunted by the demons of his past. A man who wandered out into the wasteland. And it was here, in this blighted...
All this simulated travel we did. I talk to people and tell them that... if you can see the road moving behind, we're moving. If you don't see anything moving behind, we're not moving.
Yeah, this is one of my favourite bits where we actually in the cinema we started off on Academy frame and then pulled out through the blower into the wide screen.
Well, that great sound also.
Yeah, and then suddenly the sound exploded out, which I really like.
That shot panning from Mel earlier, I was on a rig on the side next to him driving, and I remember hearing this screeching and seeing sparks underneath my feet, and it was the rig scraping on the ground as we came around the corner. Frightened the hell out of me. And we lost a camera head on one of these shots coming in.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
With a low rig on the insert vehicle.
This dog. I have to talk about the dog, but probably a bit later. He's quite a character. Do you know the story of the dog?
No.
Well, we wanted a dog, and we wanted a really sort of classic Australian dog, and this is the Blue Heeler, the cattle dog, wonderful dogs we grew up with in the country, and there weren't many animal trainers around, and Dale Aspen, the stunt coordinator's wife, Dale was an animal trainer, and she said, well, I can go to the pound. She went to the pound and pulled out all these dogs. Most of them were on death row. In fact, this one was to die the next day.
Oh, really?
And she started playing with them and see which ones were responsive. And that dog actually picked up a stone, a pebble, and knocked it towards her feet and invited her into a game. And she'd pick up the stone and he would watch the little pebble obsessively. And she suddenly realised, my God, this dog, I can train this dog because he knows that he will look at the stone no matter what, thinking he'll throw it or play with it. And that's how he worked. He actually got himself a job and avoided being killed on death row. And it was fantastic. And he had a great life, that dog. He was fantastic. You'll notice when he watches anything, he's usually watching food or a stone. and he ended up on a farm and just ran cattle and had a fantastic time.
That's good, isn't it? She would have used him in other movies then as well?
I don't know.
Or was this his sole performance?
I don't know. I'm not aware of him appearing in other movies, but he was just a sort of a mad dog, and
Isn't that good?
yeah, it's great character. But the other thing too I remember about the movie, one of the great advantages of the movie is we shot it in continuity. The story lent itself to being shot in continuity, and we were all on the one location way out in the centre of Australia in Broken Hill, and to actually be able to do that is a big thing.
Yeah,
because
to start at the beginning, it rarely happens.
Yeah, because I don't know if you remember, we barely had a script.
That's
we
right.
were working on the script as we were going.
We used to work on your little scribbled pictures every morning.
That's
your little
right.
cartoons, we used to call them. Dr. George's cartoons.
And I had this pact with myself that because we made the film in such a hurry, I had a pact that if I didn't stay with my scribbles one day ahead of the shoot, then the whole film would fall down on the ground. So quite often I'd be working right until 2 o'clock in the morning in my hotel room doing those scribbles, and they were so bad that I'd come to you the next day and I'd hand them out to everybody. And we were shooting in the middle of winter.
Yes.
And then we had those big sort of 44-gallon drums, and everyone would be huddling around and in the early morning. And I hand them over, and everyone would look at them. And as I turned to walk away, I noticed that people were just throwing them in the big 44-gallon drums.
Putting them in the fire.
And to me, I was very honoured that that you were the only one who ever kept them. You'd look at them,
Okay.
quite often looking at them upside down, but you always kept them. And you'd say, "What does this one mean, George?" And but it did keep us going through the movie because we were making it up as we were going along.
Well, that was the Bible. I mean,
Yeah, that was in many ways what we
really
had.
was.
Yeah. And I don't know where they are. We don't know if we ever found them.
They were tiny too. They were tiny little storyboards you used to do. Like,
Yeah.
much bigger than a postage stamp.
Yeah, that's right. They were quicker that way to do it. One of the things we set out to do in the story was to make it very minimalist in terms of dialogue and tell as much of it as possible purely in film language. And I like that little hurdy-gurdy scene because it's very simple. And I remember very early on, that's when I realised that, Mel there's something very charismatic about Mel. And one of the great things about it is, in the movie, he never opens his mouth to smile. And he only gives 3 little Mona Lisa kind of smiles, little kind of lift in the corner of the mouth. I think there are only 3 of them. Because I said the character shouldn't smile.
When does he do the smiling?
Well, he just did one now when he's listening to the hurdy-gurdy,
Okay.
but also remembering of what the world was once like in the sound of Happy Birthday playing on the hurdy-gurdy.
Right.
And he smiles when he gives it to the little boy later.
This high shot coming up here is one of my favourites from when I'm going to cherry pick at that.
Yeah.
And I use it in most films wherever I can get away with it. It's just such a great way to keep the tension going.
Yeah. Yeah, we can see the helicopter on the side there. I must say, I loved the location out there at Broken Hill.
Yeah.
Particularly those early shots of we just saw the shot of all the gum trees and the dry riverbeds and so on.
Yeah, and the Monday Plains, that hill. I remember the shot earlier where I had a magenta grad on the camera and all the sky's red.
Yeah. Bruce Spence. Bruce, to his credit, he'd just come out of hospital. He was quite ill at the time, and he came in from Sydney, and just to lift himself up out of the sand was difficult. But I loved what he did in this scene.
That's extraordinary.
In these,
Yeah.
in fact, we almost wrote this part for him. Remember, he made an early Australian movie called Stork.
Yes.
And he was great in the theatre, and I thought it'd be really interesting to get him to do this guy.
We didn't have Steadicam. This is all on.
That's right.
All on tracks.
Handheld. No, handheld.
Handheld.
I remember you said because it's very, very hard to on the anamorphic, with the wide screen to handhold a lot of stuff. And I remember you said to me, I said, look, we, can't afford the time to put tracks down often. I know this was done on tracks, and you said, okay, let me try to do some. As is your fashion, you said, let me try to do some without tracks, and quite often it was so steady.
Yeah, you can get away with handheld a lot. But the anamorphic, the cameras are so big and the lenses are pretty heavy too. But
this hand under here, by the way, is Byron Kennedy's. He was running a little separate unit there, right
look at
there.
that. Look at that. Yeah.
And he turned it off because that was just a little pickup he did. He ran a little second unit. And later on in the movie, there's a shot where Mel turns that thing back on again, and that was Mel's hand.
Oh, was it? Because Byron's secretary was one of the girls we see later on, one of the bikies.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. You realise when you're out there in the bush, you're using all the resources you can. Yeah. I mean, you had how many camera crew did you have? Yeah, it's very.
We had minimal.
Yeah.
Really, I think the most cameras we might have had 5 when we rolled the tanker at the end, and I don't think we ever had more than 4 or 5.
No, 4, I think.
4 was it? Yeah.
And
boy.
And I remember, for the most part, you were doing all the operating.
Yeah.
Richard Merriman would do
Richard Merriman
occasionally.
full focus, yeah.
And then we had Billy Grimmond. I remember you told me about Billy Grimmond, a legendary cameraman.
Yeah,
And he came out and did some.
That's right. Billy had done the Skippy series.
Yeah.
In the early 60s or whatever that was, yeah. And we'd come out onto the set in the morning, and if we were really early and the breakfast wasn't ready, or the tea wasn't hot already, Bill would have a couple of sausages in his pocket. He'd light a fire and put the sausages on a fire and cook them and hand them out to people. It was like a surviving bushman out there.
Yeah.
But the crew was very, very tiny. Richard hadn't pulled focus on a major movie before. Richard is still with me today, by the way, still as my operator. We call him Dick Deadeye. He's just got an incredible eye for capturing moments without fuss.
Yeah, it was a wonderful crew.
Graham Ardell, the grip, the big Australian grip, and Johnny Morton was my gaffer. But we had very small crew. I think I only had like 3 electrics, 3 or 4 maybe. We had a crane. Remember that small little crane we had? We used to crane up and down a little jeep. I say there's something inherent in all Australians, whether they're from the city or whether they're from the country, about being cinematographers, about being filmmakers. You know? And the classic example is I was doing a story on the drought in Queensland as a news story. And we used to use 3 film stocks, Kodak film stocks. One was plus X for day exterior work. One was tri X for interior work. And then there was 4X, which was for really night exteriors or when it got dark. And I was shooting with a big guy up there who was driving a bulldozer and clearing land out during the drought. And it was hot, and it was sweaty, and it was late afternoon, and the sun had set, and I held up my camera, and I held up my light meter, and I'm waving it around. The needle's hardly moving on the light meter. And this big old guy in the bulldozer looked down at me and said, "Hey, mate, looks like you could do with some 4X. I'd never been to Queensland. I didn't know he was talking about beer. That's what he was talking about, film stock.
That's a good story.
Thousands of gallons, much as you want.
The rawness and the way we were kind of a guerrilla outfit, I think, led to some of the energy of the film. And I must say, looking at it again, I just love some of the compositions. It was particularly when you're working with landscapes and just figures in a landscape, to work with the anamorphic. Was it 2.33 to 1 or 2.35 to 1?
2.35 to 1, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a classic frame for composition. It's so beautiful for composition. And
this shot here coming up is just great. Oh no, that's where it grabs him. Oh no, yeah, just beforehand. In fact, I remember this when we shot this on top of the hill. It's one of my favourite sequences in the movie. This shot, this frame here, I love this with him.
Yeah, isn't it
foreground
something?
and looking down.
It's classic, isn't it?
Yeah, and here's this dog again. Here's a classic. I mean, I just can't. He'd be a natural actor.
Yes, he
just
sure was.
just doing it the way he was lying.
He's a little star.
Yeah.
And what was Mel actually eating here out of these tins? What was that?
I don't know if it was dog food.
No, it wasn't dog food.
I don't know what it was. It was certainly meat, but I don't know what it was. It was probably spaghetti, meatballs or something. But
Dinky die.
yeah, I don't think it was dog food. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know.
Look at that little dog, isn't he?
The way he looks at the other guys.
Yeah.
We were on the top of this hill. We had to cart everything up the top, and we spent the whole day up there, I think.
Yeah, and then we got the long lens stuff. Remember we did the long lens stuff of the attack, the initial attack down below.
In this story, when Bruce Spence actually finally gets to eat some of this stuff and lick out after he takes his turn after the dog, after Max eats his fill, and then the dog has his fill, and then
Bruce's turn last.
It's the gyro captain's turn, and at the end of it, when the dusk falls, he actually wipes his mouth delicately with a little handkerchief, as if he's been to a swank restaurant.
That's right.
That's a wonderful thing when actors can do all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, that day, that was Graham Ardell's hand, the grips. Trying to take the food from the dog. Graham's such a big lumbering guy. He could he could lift a mountain. And I remember this night, I was waiting for the dusk to fall and magic hour to come when the lights could light up the...
I only had one small light up the top. We didn't take anything up the top. One tiny little Honda generator and one light for filling Mel up. This was all magic hour. So.
Yeah.
Just so you got enough light to see the land.
And see the dust trail.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
I shot back there on Razorback a couple of years afterwards. We went exactly the same spots.
Yeah.
Same, exactly the same.
Well, I remember we were looking for locations further in the centre of Australia, in Salt Lakes and whatever, and it was just sort of almost as an afterthought we came back to Broken Hill. At the time, shooting in Broken Hill, it was a very heavy, it was a tough mining town, so there was a lot of suspicion about a movie crew coming in, but I must say after we finished, there was such a great relationship with the town and the miners and everything. It was just, it became a filmmaking centre.
Yeah.
And Steve Knappman, the location manager, was very young at the time, just had this extraordinary ability. And we were very good citizens. We really, and we turned it basically into a filmmaking centre as the mines were closing down. But
there's a story that a lot of the local guys who played extras had to have their hair cut into mohawks. And initially they were very embarrassed by it and used to wear beanie caps and when they walk down the street or when they're in public, and they'd only just take their beanie caps off just for the takes. But then they gradually started to feel a bit cocky and relax with it, and then they were really, really proud of their mohawks after a couple of weeks and forget the beanie caps.
Yeah, that's right.
Were we up on this ridge for one day only?
No,
Must have
I
been
think it was
more,
much
'cause
more. I
all
just
this.
remember that particular day with the twilight shot and eating the food. I don't know. I would say we're probably there more than one day.
This is where we did the points of view with telescope point of view with shaky long lenses.
That's right. I remember a really, really long lens, and because we tend to shoot these films on very wide lenses, and then to use the very long lens and give a feeling of a telescope.
I think it was an 800mm, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, something. I don't know. You got a good memory. That's considering all the footage and all the lenses if you look through over the years, Dino.
There we are. That's the stuff.
Ah, yeah.
And the wildness of the pan helps with the energy too.
Yeah,
It keeps it
yeah,
going.
absolutely. There's Vern Wells. He's an amazing guy. He comes across as incredibly tough and cruel in this. But he's a very gentlemanly man.
Yes. I saw him a couple of times in Los Angeles over the years.
But he's one of those actors that I remember when he actually put his wardrobe on and he shaved his head, he suddenly became the character. You know?
They were cold too. Boy, their little bums were cold there. It was so freezing out there. We were all rugged up.
It doesn't look cold, but it was the middle of winter. And I remember the amazing thing about Mel Gibson at the time, that he'd have that leather suit on, but he'd be covered up with blankets huddling around one of those firebrands and whatever they're called, and he'd be covered up with a blanket and so on, and he'd literally be teeth chattering, like shivering with cold. And he'd whip off the blanket, say, "Okay, get ready," and action. And the moment action's called, he would stop chattering, his face would stop being blue, and he'd go through as if it was the heat of summer in the desert, go through the take, nail the take, and he'd say cut, and the moment he'd say cut, he'd start shivering again. His knees would be knocking. It was an amazing thing. The physiology of the actor, to actually induce that state. The other interesting thing about Mel is he's a very paradoxical kind of guy. I think it's part of what makes charisma, is that there's all the opposite traits going on in the person. And on the one hand, he's this real blokey bloke, a real macho bloke. On the other hand, he's incredibly kind. One of the things about these movies I find is they are like visual music. I mean, one of the big things I keep on, the big analogy I use for a lot of filmmaking is musical, and it's music for the eye, and that's why I prefer almost to cut these movies silent and see how it plays to the eye. And this is kind of, like the action sequence is a little bit of visual rock and roll, and something else might be a visual, adagio or something quieter and so on. So, and you're always looking for those sort of things, and just in many ways, music is on the one hand rigorous, on the other hand purely an act of the spirit, really.
When they arrive at the compound here, there's a young boy, one of the compound people, not the little feral boy. But I was working on the Alamo, and this guy said, "I've worked with you before." He's a Scotsman.
You're kidding.
And I said, "I don't remember." He said, "Well, don't tell anybody, for God's sake." He said, "I was the boy at the gate when Mel brings the wounded guy back in."
You're kidding.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And he played one of the ensemble in the Alamo.
Really?
Now, this is handheld too. We didn't have steady.
Yeah, that's right.
And as far as you go, let her out.
I remember this. This is again, relatively early day, and we shot this film pretty quickly, and
Yeah.
I remember you said, "Oh, I can do it on the handheld." And,
Well, I'd done a lot of handheld. I'd done like whole dramas handheld, but with 16mm, never with anamorphic, never with 35 or 6.
and also you'd had a lot of documentary experience where you just had to go into. I remember you made a documentary at a Russian wedding.
Oh, yeah.
And you just went in there and that's one of the things I noticed.
Did you see that? Did you?
Yeah, and I noticed when you did the documentary, you had one eye through the viewfinder, but another eye roving to pick up whatever's interesting next. And I noticed how you operate like that. So it's almost like you've got two eyes going, one watching the movie and one checking out what's in the peripheral frame where they can pick something up.
Well, you have to with documentaries. You really have to be aware because you're only going to get one chance at it.
A lot of interesting actors here.
A mixture of faces and characters from the actors to the local characters as well.
2 or 3 miles down the road, left for dead. We had a deal. There were 3 other vehicles. Did you see anything of them?
Archie Whiteley died. She was the little girl, the little blonde girl in the story. And this actor, David Slingsby at the time, he was a great actor in the theatre. And I remember I asked him to do the film, and he read the screenplay, and he said to me, "Look, I'd do the film, but are you going to really shoot a real rabbit?" and I said, "What real rabbit?" He said, "Oh, there's one point in the story where someone shoots a real rabbit." And I said, "Well, I'd even forgotten that there was one." And but I said, "We'll find a way to shoot the rabbit without making it real, or someone really shooting the rabbit." And I think he made a very extremely valid point to kill even an animal, for a film is so wrong, and because it's just a film.
Sure.
And even the kangaroos, there's a kangaroo carcass even early in the movie, was taken from the kangaroo shooters that had already shot it. And I didn't want anyone to go out and shoot a kangaroo. I said, "Okay, get one that would normally go to the market."
Yes.
And so we'll see it come up later, but when the rabbit gets shot, he had a little rabbit fur harness and a little tripwire. His little rabbit gets let loose and gets his little tripwire,
right.
And it flicked up an arrow, and the special effects guy, and then he had his little moment in the movie, and then we just let him go.
Yeah.
And I think David Slingsby was very happy, and I was too. The rabbits went out and bred. Even though rabbits are vermin out there, they've basically introduced, they're not native animals, and basically ruined a lot of the Australian desert by digging burrows and eating all the little bit of growth there.
So was the rabbit a deal breaker for him?
Oh yeah, he was very principled. He said, "I can't do it if you're going to kill a rabbit."
Isn't that something? I
was very impressed by that.
Great props. Fabulous props on this, and the design of that whole compound that Gracie designed is just terrific. And the vehicles, of course, with
Yeah, Grace Walker is an amazing guy. I met him on a film called Chain Reaction, and he's such another classic Australian fella.
Yes.
And
yeah.
he's confident enough to call himself Grace as a nickname. And I said, Grace, do you want us to call you Graham or Grace in the credits? He said, no, Grace, so we call him Graham, Grace Walker. And these cowboy boots and Aussie ways, he's a wonderful character, and very, very like hands-on, and loves to get sort of all the grime on him, and works were very real, so everything in the movie is real, and I think it's one of the things that
shows.
Really, there's nothing fake, nothing plastic, everything was built real. And the vehicles, the big rule we had was with the costumes with Norma Morrisseau, and with the actual vehicles, was you had to have a way of explaining how everything was there. They'd take a world that's kind of decayed and fallen apart, and then you can find all these objects and put them together. It didn't matter where it came from, you can put them together. So you got a hockey mask on the guy's face, like the humongous character, and all the bits of junk and stuff on the toady, this character, played by Max Phipps, who's a wonderful actor. A lot of these people were from the theatre, very experienced actors. I hadn't had much experience with actors at the time. Tyler Coppen.
Where did the humongous come from?
Well, humongous was ex-Mr. Sweden called Kel Nielsen, and he just came in. We just needed a guy as a bodybuilder, and he came in and...
we put that prosthetic on the back of his head with the throbbing veins.
That's right,
yeah.
And,
we see that in one of the shots. I don't think we saw it more than once, did we?
Yeah, you see. Yeah, I think there's a couple of cutaways to it. But I remember it broke down halfway through, so it only throbs once. We only took the one where it could throb. And this boomerang thing.
This is one of those very memorable moments that people talk about.
It was a kind of Aussie joke with the boomerang, but a steel boomerang. But the film, even though it sort of calls on a lot of storytelling traditions, it's a kind of an Australian twist on it, really, and the Outback Australia.
Quiet! No more games. No more games.
When you were interviewing me, and I'd never been interviewed for a movie before, ever.
Oh, you never?
I'd never been interviewed the only time I'd ever been interviewed for a job was when I very first started at Channel 9 in Adelaide. So this was the second interview of my life, and it was with you and Byron. And you were both dressed, you had a bow tie and a coat, and Byron had a suit on. And you asked me sort of questions about this, that, and everything else. I don't think you mentioned the Steam Train film, but I remember you saying, who are your favourite cinematographers? And I couldn't think of any.
No.
And I said, Don McAlpine. Because he'd just done Break 'em Around or something, I think. And I felt such an idiot. I felt such a heel.
But we do it my way.
Moses, wait.
We do it my way. Fear is all a lie. The gasoline will be ours. Then you shall have your revenge. Take him away.
It was a thing in Australia at the time. It was such a small industry that actors came from everywhere. If they were either from a commercial or, some were highly theatre trained. Others had done soapies, and some have come out of the National Drama School, and others had done sitcoms, and you had to get them all together and try to fashion, and someone had just been a bodybuilder, and you get them all together.
Did you do a lot of rehearsals with the actors? I mean, prior to making the movie?
No.
Before shooting?
No. I would now, but there's not a film we can really rehearse.
But did you do a read-through or what's the whole ensemble?
Even then, I was smart enough to understand that probably the best to do is to do an immersion, try to sort of get something, just basically just chat about the characters and what's happening, not specifically work the scenes, but talk generally about the world and do that sort of immersion work, try to understand how they got there and who they would be and so on. And have them feel out their wardrobe and costumes and so on. And I'd probably do it differently today, but back then, because you were doing things, you didn't have time to pay for rehearsals and things like that. But there was certainly a lot of sitting around talking, working on things.
Inspiring them.
Trying to inspire, I think people really got into it. I mean, they usually do on films where people really, if people know that everybody's serious about the film and that they're really, and they watch everyone else working so hard, it is very inspiring. where people, and in those days, it was a great time in the industry because we were all sort of pretty naive and innocent and basically enthusiastic, weren't we? I mean, it was all
Totally,
driven
absolutely.
by a kind of an enthusiasm and the wonder of making movies, which is extraordinary.
Yeah, I come back here and I find that still exists here.
Yeah,
Much more so than having been shooting in America or wherever I've been for the last 10 or so years. It's still something about it here that's more magical.
Well, I must say, I find the place I really found it again was in New Zealand, visiting the guys on Lord of the Rings. I thought, okay, it reminded me of Australia 20 years ago. There's a kind of a can-do, let's get in and do it sort of attitude, and not really thinking thinking outside the box, being unorthodox in approach, willing to try things, and also multi-skilling. I think one of the things that made the Australian film industry, and I think, is great in what's happening in New Zealand, is that you'll find one person being able to do a number of jobs. And so that sort of comprehensive approach makes them real filmmakers.
Yeah, so it doesn't become just departmental.
It doesn't come departmental. I mean, Richard Taylor, for instance, who's Peter Jackson's partner there. I mean, he not only does wardrobe, makeup, but he's a visual effects supervisor and does models, and is a master at all of those. And each of the disciplines inform the other. Emil Minty, he's a great little kid.
Remember we used to say, when's a meal not a meal? When it's a minty. They came up with that. Yeah.
For those that don't know, a minty is an Australian candy. I love it. Yeah.
If we have to, yes, there's always a way. But the first step.
And Mike Preston, he was a boxer.
Mm-hmm. Did Emil go on to further his acting career?
No, it was interesting. Emil had a wonderful quality about him. He was a wonderful kid, and when he was on the film, it was really good because he was able to sort of engage with a lot of people and saw how people worked and really enjoyed the experience of the film. And when he left and went back to school, I think he found it as not as interesting as the experience of being on the film, of course.
2 days ago, I saw a vehicle that had hauled that tanker. Do you want to get out of here? You talk to me.
This is one of my favourite looking scenes in the film from lighting point of view, where we shot at Magic Hour, where you really only got like half an hour to shoot while there's still a little bit of light in the sky. And the close-up of Mel, I think, is just, particularly on a big screen, it's just gorgeous, this one here.
Yeah, Dino, this is... In fact, you were master at the Magic Hour, because that was the thing I noticed in Steam Train Passes and the way that you shot this great steam train. And I remember this. I mean, you taught me how to shoot at Magic Hour. You get everyone prepared, and you've only got that small window, and you get it quickly, and you can't sort of screw around too much. You get stuck into it, and you pull off this beautiful stuff. A great thing shooting out there in the landscape. To do all that, wasn't it?
Yeah, oh yeah. I had a rig for the night shooting. We had a crane up. It's like a 20 by 20 big white bounce board hanging from a crane made of polystyrene foam. And we'd bounce lights in it from down below for ambience, like for moonlight ambience. And I think it was on this that the crane stayed up overnight and the wind blew all the poly away.
Oh, yeah.
And I went back there years later and there's still poly just sort of floating around the desert there.
Oh, no.
The wind had carried for miles, yeah.
Difficult in those days. We didn't have the big lights.
Didn't have the big night lights. No. I went a bit too far here. I was notorious at underexposure. I was always frightened of overexposure. I was frightened of having things too bright and too lit, I guess. And here it's really borderline, some of this. Way down there.
But it worked. There's Guy Norris,
Yeah.
Guy. He's a great stunt coordinator and second unit director, and he's directed now. If you look at this movie, there's only about 5 or 6 stuntmen in this whole movie, virtually, and for the most part, and Guy plays just about every character.
He was the bear claw.
Yeah, he's the bear claw
wasn't
man, yeah.
One of his key characters.
I remember Mel's makeup. He gets into wardrobe. They give him a haircut and whatever, and he starts pulling hair out of his eyebrows. He said, "I think I should he'd be scarred more, and he gets a scissors, starts cutting his hair, and he says his hair would be cut rougher, and he starts ripping up his costume. And
Did he really?
Yeah, it was great. And I remember Norma, who's so cool, she just sat back and said, yeah, go for it, Mel, and helped him rip it up a little bit more and beat it and stuff like that. And I thought, okay, there's a guy who's got no vanity. He's sort of prepared to sort of pull out bits of his eyebrows and all look sort of tougher and stuff. I remember this night in the ditch and watching dailies and thinking, oh, we can't see it, but in a way it really helps the scene because it's mysterious.
So nice, George.
No, you're very daring,
like,
Dino. That was a great thing, you know. That's a big thing I learned about you, that give it a shot.
This is one of those images here too.
Yeah, this was an early morning. I remember this morning very well. I remember the props. People said, let's not fill the tanks and to make it easy for Mel to carry. And I said, no, you got to see that it's got weight in the tanks.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Like people carrying empty suitcases. It looks terrible.
So he's really puffing there. But time and time again on this movie, you know, you put up your light meter and you'd say, because we had to shoot right through the day, and particularly in the chase sequences, you'll see early morning shot would be cut with a late afternoon shot, and quite often you'd say, well, George, we've lost light. And I said, does it mean we can't shoot? And he said, no, we'll shoot. And we kept shooting until the death on most days, and you managed to.
Well, I learnt from you and Byron too. I remember you saying to me, and I remember Byron's words saying, with this sort of action, you can cut cloud with sun, with sunrise, with sunset. You could even have it sort of raining in some of these cuts. They're so quick that you'd never know it. So, you know, it wasn't a matter of getting precious about the light. It's a matter of getting the, you know, getting the coverage, getting the shots.
Yeah.
We shot in this exact location on Razorback 2 years later. This exact creek bed.
Yeah.
Right here. Classic Australia.
Yeah, it's classic Australia, exactly.
I knew it. I knew it'd work. Lethal. Lethal, these snakes. Born killers. No. It's my snake. I trained it. I'm going to eat it. So find your own. Get out of it. I got a recipe for snake. Delicious. Fricassee of reptile. Get out. Better than your dog food. No. Pure protein.
How long were you writing the script? All these tiny little ideas, all these little moments.
Well, the script, these are just coming up at the spot, you know, the idea of a dice and whatever. We looked at the props and just said, I can't remember. It was very gonzo filmmaking in a weird way. So it wasn't, I mean, we had a very strong basis of what we're doing. I mean, I made this film almost to overcome all my frustrations on the first Mad Max, because that was such a low budget and such a tough movie. So I had all this sort of pent-up energy for the story and the filmmaking, because the first Mad Max was incredibly, just very, very tough. I mean, we were ambitious. No one really had done a stunt movie quite like that before in Australia and so on.
There we are, 2 people in the gyrocopter that only held 1.
Yeah, how do we do that?
That was a little, very lightweight dummy.
Yeah, no.
Jerry was the gyro captain, wasn't he?
Yeah, Jerry Gyro.
He was quite a character.
Yeah. I think you have to be to fly one of those.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, there we were above the Bundy plane, and the wind was real.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah. Look at that.
Yeah.
What about me? You're not going to leave me here, are you?
We started writing, I remember very well, Christmas Eve, 1980. And the film was released a few days before Christmas, 1981, in Australia. So it took a year between the moment we started to write the screenplay. It took a year to start writing the screenplay, to shoot the film, do post-production and release the film. And it was quite impressive. But as I say, a lot of that was because I'd learned so much on Mad Max. So this is the beginning of the sort of second bigger action sequence of the movie. Apart from the first chase, there's this return to the compound, and then there's the final big chase scene.
Yeah. There's a lot of handheld work here from whether it was a motorbike and sidecar or whether I was in a buggy here following the truck, but distinctly can still feel the stones flying up in my face. I had gloves and goggles on, so I was protected, but how raw and dirty and real this footage is. And I think if you were to do it now, you'd lose something if you didn't do it the same way. If you put a remote head up there and all the business that goes with it, with cable and transmitting images, and it just wouldn't have the same guts that this stuff's got.
I really agree, and I mean that's Mel driving the truck when he's in a close up, and it's a real truck, and you're sitting there next to him and filming it, and you know, there's Fern Wells again, and he just threw himself into the role amazingly well.
Yeah,
completely opposite of his the character he plays. That's Max Aspen, the stunt coordinator. He just goes into it. And you must have been operating in there in the middle of that stunt.
Yeah.
In the vehicle, in the stunt vehicle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this, the gyrocopter obviously wasn't flying. We had that on a rig. We had it on a rig on the back of a truck.
Yeah.
And we shot all of these pieces in like a half a day. Yeah. But it's this stuff here, these shots here where we're following behind the truck right in here.
Oh, yeah.
Where we're handheld in a buggy or in a bike. It looks like a buggy. And it was wild and woolly and stones flying in the face. And, but look at it, it's just great.
How can you look through the lens? This shot, I remember this was done in a helicopter, and all this stuff here. And I remember that day, Byron came back. He'd just seen the dailies before we did, and it was the first day. He said, "George, I think we've got a movie here." He said, "I'm just thinking that," and it's the first time I had any sense that the movie was going to work.
Oh, good.
And
he came back from Sydney. He'd been to the lab, or
and he saw dailies early on. Didn't know what the movie would be like until we actually got back and actually cut it. So just going on instinct all the way. And this is the stuff coming up. This is when I realised how courageous you were, Dino, because you had the bungee. We had
bungee hanging. I was hanging onto a camera that's handheld inside. But when we were on the front looking back to him, it was so violent. I had a 2C Arri, and it was so violent that I had to take the camera away from my eye, and I just aimed it. This shot here.
Yeah, that's it.
And you said to me later, how was it? I said, I don't know. I was just aiming the camera in the direction of the action.
And I said, well, should we do it again? And you said, no, let's have a look at it. And you know what? All these other shots, we had to put wobble in to match it. And it made the sequence.
Oh, is that good?
So good. Again, it's pure. I mean, this was a movie made on instinct in the writing and in the cinematography. And that's about the big thing you taught me. Just go off gut. And I've often quoted some of the shots and the way these were done because there's a great shot coming up later where Warrior Woman, a very interesting shot where Warrior Woman actually grabs a guy and cuts his throat in this fight just coming up here. And we did 2 takes, and the first take, you moved too late. She moved sooner than you did, and so the camera lagged her. And then you did the second take, and the second take you followed her perfectly. And then I said, well, which one do you think we're going to use? And he said, I think you're going to use the first one. There it is here. No, that couldn't have been the shot.
Another one.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot about that.
There's
no, but you did. I can't remember exactly what shot it was, but you know, most operators that I knew would sort of worry, I missed that one, and you said, no, go the one that's wilder, which has a bit more energy.
It annoys me now when operators ask actors to stand up slowly.
Oh no,
that drives me nuts.
Yeah. Wobble cam and everything's freed things up a little bit for operators, but so you can do all that. Mad Max was my first film, and Mad Max 2 Wrod was my second film. And the big thing I learned between the two is that filmmaking is tough. There's no question. Even if you're making an intimate, small film indoors, it's tough. But I think that I learned from you that you can do it gracefully. That it's like you're in a war zone, and you're fighting the elements, you're fighting time, you're fighting all that creativity, all those things that you have to sort of do. But it can be fun. It can be exhilarating. The very arduousness of it can be exhilarating.
Certainly.
And that's what I think, and that's what comes through in the movie to some extent. And it gets you through a relatively long shoot, and you come out the end, and you're exhausted, but your spirit is very high.
Absolutely.
And that's what happened on that movie. A lot of the time it was all on trust. I know a couple of times people came up to you and said, well, what the hell is he doing? What are they doing? What are they doing? And you just said, I don't know, just let's go with it and just see. And,
I don't remember that.
I remember that. You told me afterwards, and you said you just had the instinct that you'd come together. I didn't know if it was going to work. I didn't know how. A lot of it's just an intuitive thing. You go out and you do it. I love the fact that we worked so intuitively in those days. I mean, informed by a lot of rigour in terms of the work and the talking and so on about it that we had. But finally, when you get out and do it, you don't really have time to consider, okay, exactly what does this shot mean and exactly how it goes. You're just working just off what you feel is the right way to do it. And there's the big thing, as I said, I learned from you, is the feeling that you got from a shot. You weren't looking at it technically. You weren't saying, oh, the light wasn't right, or no, I missed that move, or yeah, there wasn't quite a graceful move, or you weren't saying, oh, there's a wobble in the middle of the camera. You were basically saying, gee, that just felt right. Sid Hayland, the actor with the World War II helmet, was from vaudeville. Is Archie Whiteley.
Oh, I'm okay. Just get them organised. We're moving out tonight.
This is a favourite little moment of mine when these two guys are talking to the mechanics. It's just something that the actors started to do where one would copy the other. And it was always Chris Graves, the actor, and Steve Spears. They just played around with this. Here.
Cracked timing case cover and it's broken a couple of teeth off the timing gears.
Got a cracked timing case cover, it's broken a couple of teeth off the timing gear.
The radio's damaged at the core.
The radiator's damaged at the core.
Got a cracked water pump.
It's got a cracked water pump.
And a fractured injector line.
It's got a fractured injector line.
Well, what does all that mean?
Yeah, okay, but what does that mean? What does that mean?
24 hours.
24 hours?
They've got 12.
You've got 12. Okay.
Get him down, quick, come on.
That's good.
Just something that the actors did.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
There's a lot of moments in the movie.
Yeah, it's about the only one. That and the dog. I think the Gyro Captain too.
Yeah.
Virginia Hay, that was the first movie that she did.
Yeah. The wardrobe is superb with these shoulder pads and were they like left over from like an American football?
Yeah, exactly.
That
That was the whole thing. It's basically said to Norma, just get whatever you can, anything you can find, and just rework it. And so she got football pads from America and from American football and bits of everything, stuff out of S&M stores, bits of junk. Everything was just
World War II helmet there.
Yeah. Even the makeup that day, if you watch Mel's face, he's covered in that sort of black tire and from the flamethrowers and stuff. We didn't wipe it off its face, we just left it on his face and it was black.
Now this was a second unit shoot.
Yeah, that's right.
We didn't do that, did we? That was done separately.
But who was the DP?
Jeff Simpson.
Was it Jeff?
Jeff Simpson do that? I think he did.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't do that.
We did this. No, we didn't do this. No, this is them.
But I remember this very well, Dino. Every night at the end of the shoot, we'd look at the sky and say, "Is it night? We can get a really nice sky." And it went on for a couple of weeks. We'd say, "Okay, we have everyone ready to do this," and they were looking for a really interesting sky. And I remember one particular day, it didn't look like the sky was going to come over really interesting, and we were driving away, and right at the last minute, this brilliant sky apparently came up, and you said to me, "Whatever you do, George, don't look back. Just don't look back." And at that moment, instead of looking back, I flashed my eye up to the rear vision mirror, and there was a little bit of sky that I could see, and it looked amazing.
Not always the way.
And you just can't, I said, "Don't look back." And I always stood with this that way you can't look back and regret what you missed. You can only look forward to something.
Well, we've got our share of good stars, I think, in there.
Oh, yeah. But you pick them up and, a couple of films down the track, you get lucky and you get there. All this night shoot with it. Why is it those flares come up on
those blue? That's the design of the anamorphic lenses.
Yeah.
And you get, I call them unsightly anamorphic flares. That's what they are. Yeah, and they're very difficult to get rid of when you've got practical lights in shot, as we did here. And
I kind of like them.
Yeah.
You don't see them anymore.
Well, you try and avoid them, obviously, if you can. And it's also something that can be taken out now. If you're doing digital mastering on your movie, you can take them out fairly easily.
Yeah. I sort of quite liked them. It made it feel like grown-up filmmaking at the time.
Okay.
Is there any wrong sneaking away like this?
This is the love story in Wrod Wharahear, isn't it?
No, I didn't.
The unlikely couple. She was about 5'2" and he's about 6'11" or something.
That's right.
She looks tall because of her little top knot.
Yeah, that's right. That's classic Norma. He's just a little kid then.
I'm staying. I'm sorry.
And he works his face
Yeah.
Doesn't he? Really does. He doesn't waste a moment.
Have you changed the way you do night shoots in any way? Basically, just bigger lights, better lights.
Yeah, there's technology's brought new equipment and new lights, and moonlight's always been the hardest thing to recreate because you can only light a certain area, and moonlight goes on forever.
He's leaving. Look, I don't have time for long speeches.
One of the big things I learned, I remember that we'd use some smoke in some scenes, that oil smoke and stuff, and I remember we usually doing a shoot, and often I got some bronchitis and I lost my voice. And I remember this particular night I couldn't speak. I literally had to direct with almost sign language and notes, and I learned a big lesson. The scene plays fine, and you don't need to speak very much as a director. Because if you say something, it just has to be sort of precise, and you can do it with very minimal. And sometimes I think you can overload the actors and the crew with information, sometimes. But providing you're pretty focused on what the scene's meant to be doing.
Yes.
You've got to make that very clear. But I think you can give actors too much, let them do what they do and then correct rather than sort of try to guide absolutely everything they do.
Yeah.
But I was surprised because I was worried. We're always going to call off the shoot because I couldn't really get words out.
Tell me your story, Max. Come on, tell me your story. What burned you out, huh? Kill one man too many? See too many people die? Lose some family? Oh, so that's it.
The first assistant director was Pat Clayton.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Pat
yeah,
the Englishman.
Great man. Yeah, he's a great man. So, Callum.
He was good.
And the thing I could never work out, Dino, you'd look at the rest of the crew, and we'd be all grimy and dusty at the end of the day, and he'd almost have a cravat and his little cap, like anti-cap cap, and almost his tweed jacket, and he looked as fresh-faced and as immaculate as he just stepped out of the shower. I could never work that out. And he was such a great, calm leader. He's a lovely man.
Sure was, yeah. He used to say to me, we'd come out and it'd be windy and raining, and he'd say, God, you're a lucky cameraman. Look at this weather. Isn't this beautiful? And the sun would be shining, or there'd be overcast, and God, you're lucky again today. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, Pat Clayton. And he'd shot in the middle of Africa. He'd shot up mountains. He's just amazing.
Yeah.
And classic of that.
There's a David Lean biography, and there's a book with David Lean on a wind machine down on the Cape Horn. And I'm sure it's Pat Clayton standing next to him. Yeah.
In storytelling terms, I like this hurdy-gurdy again, where the one little bit of affection that he has, is for this boy. He can't even go far enough, and the little kid is as feral as he is. He's still looking for human contact. It's really good. It's very simple, but I like that.
Was it in some way related to his family and Mad Max 1?
Yeah, of course. And he basically he's just denying all his humanity. Doesn't want any contact with other humans. Doesn't want to get involved in their politics. So he's inadvertently becomes involved. So he's the kind of reluctant heroic figure. And even then, he's very reluctant. He barely shifts. At the end of Mad Max 1, he's basically the destroyed soul of he's someone who's taken his vengeance, but is left with nothing. Okay, he's lost his family, and he's basically lost himself. And this is the story. And this was one of the reasons to do this film. The first one was A Vengeance Tale, and this is the beginning, the flicker of the humanity. It takes a whole movie to see, to see him evolve. And it's all driven by necessity. Everything he does is completely because he has to survive or keep going.
That scene we're just having a look at there, he's so Napoleonic there.
Yeah, I don't know why.
It's his body language, it's the way he is, it's his hair.
Yeah, I don't know. It always reminded me of that. That's so
totally.
Weird, isn't it? It's amazing you say that after all this time.
You're wrong. You're not a coward. Stupid maybe, but not a coward.
Now, was that mist? Did we put that stuff up, or was that the misty night because of those cold nights?
I don't remember it being misty. Maybe we might have put a little bit of smoke in there.
Goodbye. Good luck.
Yeah, that's our smoke.
Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah. So we went night for night to early morning.
We go!
There's the speedy shot coming up. Where did you take that to? How many frames did you skip to speed that up?
I think we went to 12.
And it was just too slow before the way we shot it?
It was too slow, and because they couldn't travel across the terrain at that speed. he did that acceleration, getting all the smoke out of the wheels. I guess the guy just floored it. And remember, we had to keep on doing this stunt. We shifted locations. Oh, you would no.
I don't remember that.
Oh, we was 2 different locations in the roll, so we rolled this. We didn't keep on doing it. We got the stunt rolling off the road. Then we went to a different location, kept rolling the vehicle down the hill. I love the composition of these shots of Mel getting out of the car.
This one?
Yeah, the way that the camera moved in on him and the way he comes out and the dog comes out. All those little things that you sort of... Some things you say, okay, that hit the sweet spot, and other things you say, oh, gee, wish we could do that again.
When I was told that you had 2 cars, I'd never done an action movie.
Yeah.
And somebody said, we got 2 cars for Mel Gibson. I said, you got 2 cars? Holy, really? What for? Well, I got to crash one. But, wow, that's neat. Wow.
And nowadays they often have, 6 or 7 cars for the doubling up.
Yeah.
I think it's just a function of, you've got a big expensive film and big expensive movie stars. We got more comments about shooting this dog than we did about anything else in the movie. And people... And yet you never see the dog shot.
No.
He's out of camera and you hear a little well.
Very cleverly done, yeah. And yet people objected to it.
Yeah, I can see people, the idea is they think that animal... They think, in many cases people remember having seen a dog being shot, but of course it didn't happen. I think the big thing that you're trying to do with a lot of violence is to keep it off the screen.
Suggest it.
And suggest it. It becomes much more powerful.
You can lead up to it and not show it.
It's all over. Let's go.
Mel was never very long in makeup doing all this stuff. That's all pretty quick, wasn't it?
But I saw him one day grinding his teeth, and I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "I can't stand this blood," because he had to go through the whole movie with the blood. I said, "I thought it was a problem with this prosthetic eye makeup," and he said, "No, it's the blood. It was made out of coffee and cochineal, and it's so sticky. It's like having honey down your neck." And I said, "Oh, is it that bad?" And he said, "Okay." So I got a bit of blood and put it on my neck, and God, it was so irritating, and just this stickiness. And he went through, all those weeks with it on.
And you wore it to make him feel better?
No, I just put it on. I said, okay, I know what it's like to walk in your shoes here now.
And this is like double printed over here. This is a great effect.
Yeah,
this was done at the lab.
Yeah, we did this at the lab just to sort of show his disorientation.
Yeah.
I like the way it plays on his coat and shoulders.
Yeah. Did you try different things, or is it what you
No,
had
it's just
in
something
mind?
I wanted to do, and I remember there's some debate whether it's not subjective. I mean, now we come up to a subjective shot where he's looking up at the camera at a double image, but the argument was that we should only do it for that. Oh yeah, here's this helicopter shot.
This is the shot we did. He was just laying outside of a Jet Ranger with a little plank that extended him out beyond the seat, and I was kneeling on the same plank, handheld, looking down at him. Cold and raining. It was freezing.
I remember it was raining, and I remember I put my hand when we were coming around for another take. I put my hand on Mel's face, on the left side of his face, and the rain stinging when you're going at speed. It was like little icicles stabbing into your hand and
needles
on his face. Needles, yeah.
That'd be a green screen if you did it today.
Yeah, you'd never do it like that again. But it somehow was more real. I mean.
Oh yeah, I think that applies to the whole movie.
Yeah.
That if we were to do it today, with today's new toys, today's new cameras, technology, remote heads.
Yeah.
It'd have a totally different feel to it. It wouldn't be as raw, wouldn't be as dirty. I don't think you'd ever get it that way without doing it exactly the way we did it.
Yeah, I think it's true. There's a lot to learn from that, actually. Because it's quite different today, isn't it? When you
totally different, yeah. A lot of this stuff you do now, particularly with now the brilliance of today's digital work, a lot of this stuff would be assisted digitally with today's different heads and equipments, with video splits. The camera, I mean, you wouldn't have been involved so much. You would have been sitting back more. I would have been back more. You wouldn't be in there getting as dirty as we did.
I remember that really well. We did get dirty.
Yeah.
You come away from that day and you just have to get all the things. But yeah, you're right. Nowadays we'd be sitting in chairs, watching a monitor, video split.
But also you get home at the end of the day and you feel you've really done it.
Yeah, definitely did. You drag yourself in and barely have a shower and then get And I'd always go home and do my storyboards. That was the...
Do the cartoons for the next day.
Yeah. And I managed to keep it going. I thought if I didn't do that, the whole film would fall apart. And in a way, that's sort of almost half dreamlike state of devising the shots and being able to sort of monitor what we're doing. I don't think the film would have been worked as smoothly as it did had we not shot in continuity. But we could feel what we were doing as a crew, what the actors were doing, how things were working as you were going, so you're able to adjust. And to the extent that we had stuff written at the end of the story, it was quite different than the film did change, particularly the end chase. But so you're able to sort of make these little minor, micro corrections as you were going along.
Okay.
Too late for deals? No deals. I want to drive the truck. Why? Why the big change?
When were you seeing cut footage?
Well, we weren't. We were watching dailies, but there was no cut footage. But the film was locked off reel by reel. There were basically 9 reels, double reels, and it was locked off reel by reel. We literally hadn't cut any footage on the next reel before we locked off, sent off the sound, sent it off to Brian May, the composer.
Neg cut?
I don't know if we got to neg cut, but probably almost to neg cutting. And that was the film. We never had a screening print. We never ran the film. That was the film. So a lot of it just was in the head, you know.
Yes.
It came out of the head. But as I say, had I not done the first Mad Max, I wouldn't have had my instinct wouldn't have been fueled up by what we were sort of doing. So the shots were all pretty, you know. I remember. I don't know. Did we talk much about how to do the shots? It was just
I
almost.
don't think so.
It was just we just felt it, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it evolved.
So, this was a good idea. It's like a little dance, isn't it?
Yeah. See, I just wonder, like, with a lot of this handheld stuff and where the camera goes from one person to another, whether that just happened instinctively or whether we'd planned a lot of this.
Yeah, I don't know. One thing I do notice that the better your relationship with the DP, the less you say. It's an unspoken language, and there's a kind of a trust that happens. You kind of just by little silent gestures, isn't it? You just line up here. You sort of know already what it's going to be. You line up here. You know it's going to move there. You know
exactly.
The grips put it down. Put your track down, or
you used to come and shake the camera a lot. I know that. Because I wasn't. I didn't shake it enough sometimes, and even though we didn't have video, I think you just liked to come along and shake the hell out of it because you knew it was going to be better.
Well, I knew from the first Mad Max,
like this stuff here, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I knew from the very first Mad Max that it was the shaking camera that really helped give the dynamic to something, and in some cases to make a thing cut, we actually had to add, optically some wobble and vibration and. So you're putting more vibration in than the other. And it was great because I remember, the grips who pride themselves on having everything really smooth would come to you and they'd say, look, what are we doing here? We're sort of violating all our art here.
Everything I've ever been taught.
And everything we've ever been taught. And you just said, just let's keep doing it the way we're doing. And that was a great thing. And you just completely went with the process and didn't think about, what are people going to think of my work or anything like that. You just sort of basically enjoyed it.
Yes.
And went for it. That's all real stuff going on.
Yeah.
I remember the shockwaves of that.
Yeah.
It was huge.
The airlines had to be notified everybody because there's stuff going to be flying high in the air.
There are huge tractor tyres going up in the air.
Yeah. This is at 96 frames a second.
Yeah.
The crash box material.
And I thought I loved the mushroom crowd. Always disappointed me that the wind took it over to the side. I thought if it went straight up, it'd be...
During this chase, on the road between Broken Hill and Menindee, the mailman stopped that day. Remember, he rode through the PAs who were holding up traffic.
Did he?
He rode through, he came straight to, when we were shooting this, or we were about to, we could have been.
Yeah.
And his line was classic, the mail must go through. He was the mailman. He was taking it to Menindee. Yeah, nothing was going to stop him. No movie, no nothing.
And this is like extreme outback Australia, where you're miles and hundreds of miles often between homesteads.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, this is the one road that serviced the only other town for hundreds of miles, really.
And I remember you'd see a car, 1 or 2 cars a day on the road. It was fantastic. This guy, Bill Zappa, the character at the back of the vehicle, here, the guy who threw that, he's going to get sort of pulled off that with a grappling hook around his leg. And the guy, it's going to be attached to a buggy, which, and it's going to be attached to a buggy. What happened was we had a dummy on the outside of the buggy, and Max Aspin, the stunt coordinator, was actually driving the buggy, and it was going to be, he turned it, and it was going to be dragged along. There's this buggy here, and that guy becomes a dummy. And at the moment, I thought, right there, I looked and I thought, oh, Max has fallen out, and that dummy, I misinterpreted as Max, because what had happened is Pat Clayton's hat had blown off in the wind, and he'd thought it blew into frame, and he called it, oh no! And my brain read that as Max. Is that dummy being sort of cut up by the rolling vehicle? And I started yelling, cut, 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 cut. And they said, what are you yelling cut for? And he said, I said, and I thought for a moment that was Max. He said, no, that was the dummy. I said, well, why did you say, oh no, shit? He called out. He said, my hat blew into the shot. But it was one of the worst moments of my life because I thought I saw a man being cut apart.
Yeah.
But Max, he was there. He was in the cage, and I said, Max, are you okay? He had the usual. He had a big grin on his face.
That's right.
But it was terrible. That was one of the worst moments I'd ever experienced. To think
that's got to be a horrible feeling.
Yeah.
I don't remember where I was during that stunt, but I wasn't aware.
You were on the back. You were on the back. Yeah. Right. But Pat was right next to me.
Right.
And he just yelled. I think he said, "Oh shit, no!" And I thought, my mind interpreted that as something going really wrong with the stunt, and it was just his hat, which wasn't in the shot anyway.
There's a shot coming up here which was taken on that crash box, which was, we're talking about the grip making up.
Oh, yeah.
Where we had what we called an Ed Kelly, a camera concealed in a steel, almost like a large egg, steel egg. And we had it planted on the side of the road and hidden with bushes. And the car was to come close to it on this impact up here in a little while, but it actually hit it.
That's Guy Norris, and that's, I remember that day.
You see the shot here where the car comes right into the lens.
Yeah, I remember being behind in a dune buggy, on the dune buggy camera for these.
There, this one, boom.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And we smashed the lens. Yeah.
Smashed the lens, 50mm lens, yeah.
And it came through the little hole. Yeah.
Bill Gooley at the lab, 5:30 in the morning, looking at the rushes in the morning, there's more driving, and the car came right towards him. I remember him saying that he ducked in his chair in the lab.
This stunt here with the guy going in underneath.
We were all surprised when you did that twice.
No, because the first time it got stuck. The truck wasn't going fast enough.
Right.
Oh, it's amazing footage, yeah. The prosthetic got stuck under here, right there.
Right.
And yeah, it was amazing footage. But it just didn't make sense.
Yeah, okay.
And that's when we did it again.
Look at that country. Look how big that is.
It just goes on and on, doesn't it? Yeah. A great days being way out there with just this mad film crew and nothing else around.
You can see how the light changes all the time here. You go from sun to cloud to this to that, and it doesn't matter at all.
That's right.
Late afternoon.
That's right. remember meeting Joe Dante, the director in America, later. He said, I could tell it was a low-budget film because you go from, sunset shot to an early morning shot and to whatever. And you certainly can't wait for your light when you're shooting this. You just have to keep going, don't you?
See there, it's overcast.
Yeah. And most DPs would have freaked out and tried to bring in massive lights or whatever, but you just said, no, let's go for it. There it is.
Yeah, now it's cloudy.
Cloudy sky.
It's a great relationship between Mel and that kid. Between Mel and little Emile. It's just perfect, isn't it?
You remember that one shot was shot indoors, and one of the couple of days it rained?
That's right.
And you said, okay, we're going inside. We went into a big shed, and you bashed a lot of light in, and we just put some sykes up and some sheets. And
get away with it.
Yeah, it was a tiny shed. Sure. We didn't have any wet. There's the whole movie's in exterior. I don't want to spoil it, but there were 2 watermelons on dummies. Watermelons with wigs on.
Okay. But you'd used that in Mad Max 1, the first Mad Max. Hadn't you used a watermelon in there for one of the bike gags?
Oh, we did tend to do a lot of that stuff, yeah. I must say one thing I did do, I probably wouldn't do it nowadays, but I was on one of the camera buggies. They needed someone to turn the camera on and off. And a lot of these low-angle shots, I was in I was dressed up in wardrobe, and all I needed to do was turn the camera on and off, and it was great seeing it down, from that level. In those days, I trusted everybody. Shots like this, but on one occasion we did one of these drive-by shots, like this one right here, and on the first take, I instead of turning the camera on at the right time, this is how hopeless I was, actually turned the camera off when I called action. And then when I said cut, I turned the camera on, and all we got was either side of the stunt. And I think you or someone said, "Okay, George, we're removing you from the buggy, and you put one of your guys in." But I must say, I did love the experience of being right down there and amongst it.
Yeah, it's special.
Because there's a certain degree of not bravado, but kind of denial when you're actually looking through a camera, isn't there? You sort of think it's, I'm just doing a camera, and I'm not in a precarious situation.
Yeah.
Because you're looking through the viewfinder.
Exactly. Yeah. It's, in fact, you miss seeing a lot of stuff because you're looking through the lens. You don't really witness the thing. You're only witnessing it through the glass. You're not seeing it with your real eyes. You're seeing it through a lens.
Oh, that's interesting. But I don't know, when operators, they pick up a lot more. I'm fascinated by listening to the stunt guys talk too, because they watch things in micro. In micro time, they can actually watch a very complex and chaotic event that happening over a couple of seconds, and can play it back for you in slow motion and say, okay, at this point this happened and then this flew off and whatever. I found it really interesting when we didn't have video splits to actually go around and say, what did you think? What did you see? And what did you see? And I usually found it was the operator and the top stunt guys who saw it most accurately. We'd finished, I think, on a Saturday, and they had all this debris on the road after the truck rolled, and we wanted to get the shot. We couldn't sort of, in those days, we couldn't even afford to have security guards watching, and we couldn't have stuff in the middle of the road. So we.
But it was our last day on location too.
It was our last day. We were all meant to go back to Sydney.
That was it, yeah. And if we didn't get that one shot, which is the shot as the vehicle rides in and we see the truck down the bottom of the hill in the distance and the little fires on the road, and I know the sun had set. The sun had set. It was twilight. And I pulled out a Panavision lens, which was a very, very fast. The fastest lens we had, it was a T1.1, which is like a huge aperture. And we pushed the film. We didn't have fast film then. We just had the 100 ASA film. And we pushed the film a stop in the laboratory, which allowed for more light, and shot it and kept our fingers crossed, basically. And the shot's in the movie. But you can see how the foreground's really, really out of focus, and how the truck is in focus in the background, and the fires are quite bright. It's this shot here.
Yeah.
There's no depth of field at all.
So basically we're shooting at night, yeah.
Yeah, the sun had gone, and it was the beginning of the evening.
That's right. And
I don't think anyone walked out of the theatre because of that.
No, Dino. I remember very well. And
the alternative was to come back Monday and reset it all and put all the debris back on the road.
In those days we couldn't afford it. But I remember you often did that because I was so used to cameramen saying, "Oh, we can't do it. We've lost light. You can't do it." And you're the opposite. You'll say, "Well, we shouldn't do it, but let's do it." And that kind of daring, I really respect that. And if, sometimes you make a mistake, and if it doesn't work, it's a mistake, and you have to go back and do it. But in this case, we pulled it off.
No harm done in trying, unless it's a huge major rig that gets destroyed or something.
Yeah.
You're really sticking your neck out. But, when you shoot magic hour sometimes, and the best take's the very last one.
Yeah.
It's so dark you can hardly see.
Yeah, exactly. And it's great. I was talking to Rob Cohen, and one of the things he loves about you is that you're still prepared to do that now after being established and whatever. You're still prepared to sort of give it a go and take risks, and instead of playing safe all the time.
Yeah, and you do a lot of magic hour where you might have 10 or 11 cameras set up now. And today's film stocks are better too.
One of the things I like about this little sequence here is Mel. This was the last day, and everyone's covered in dust, and it just looked like he's out of the wasteland, and he finally gives that little smile. So I think it's the third little smile he gives, and it's probably the biggest smile in the movie. Right here.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's as much as he's able to do.
That's great.
In realising the irony of everything. I remember we shot this shot on the way home from location one day, and we just stopped and said, "Okay, let's just do the shot." There's a little boy in the thing.
And this was simulated travel too, the shot. We weren't moving. The bus wasn't moving. We're just tracking down the side on a rough old track.
The juice, the precious juice, was hidden in the vehicles. As for me, I grew to manhood.
Oh, so this is the last shot we did. We were going home.
I became the leader, the chief of the great northern tribe. And the road warrior.
And there's that final shot.
Yeah.
And we just kept doing them, going back and forward and going until we found the one that was the right colour. So Johnny Mort's behind there.
Yeah, see where the smoke is coming up on the left? That's where the light is, and Johnny was down there in the bushes. There wasn't a lot of planning, in lighting. I mean, that shot just came up and we just did what we had to do at the moment.
Yeah.
We didn't give it a lot of forethought. I mean, the shot you'd obviously thought about, but as far as lighting was concerned, it just sort of happened in the moment.
Yeah, and people were able to move quickly enough to get it in time.
Yeah.
Just watch the credits and see how few crew members there are.
It's wonderful, George.
Yeah.
Boy, we should have had this talk a long time ago.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah.
This is good. Yeah, no, it was truly a fabulous experience for me.
Yeah.
And it was like my first ever. It was like my first date. It's the most talked about film I've ever shot. Ever.
Oh, really?
More so than Dances with Wolves, more so than anything. I could guarantee you that almost every week it's brought up in conversation somewhere.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah. By everybody. By young kids. And may not even have been born when we shot it.
Yeah.
So it just really was a phenomenon.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, is that multi-generational. The great thing about doing these, having DVDs and video and so on, is that people pick them up, and it somehow speaks to people in a way that we certainly weren't aware of it when we were making it, but then nobody is really. Dean, similar? I've enjoyed this, and obviously it's like watching a home movie and going back and remembering, as you say. But thanks, Dino.
George, thanks. It was absolutely my pleasure not only to have been there, but again today. It was just fabulous. Great to see it again.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
Thanks.
Bye.